Hello everyone and welcome to a brand new video. Today I'll take you through this fascinating process of creating my favorite piece of furniture. And this is the fourth time I'm making this cabinet, and each time it is an adventure. Throughout this furniture making journey I've learned countless of tips and tricks that I will love to share with you in this video. Be sure to watch until the end and do not miss anything. Let's start. For this project I ordered boards from my trusted supplier. These boards are already planed, which saves me a lot of time. One thing that I need to do is give them the last pass on my jointer thicknesser to make it smooth and accurate. This makes starting the project so much easier, quicker. For those who are interested, I'll leave a link to his webshop in the description so you can easily get started. When I work with panels I often use a connection system. In this case I'm using the Festool Domino jointer. A crucial tip here, make sure to keep a sufficient distance from the edge. This prevents issues when making an open dovetail joint, which I will do here, because you don't want to have a tenon exposed after you cut the tails or the pins, because that's gonna ruin your whole project. If you watch my videos, that I work always on the same way. I cut my boards parallel and then square to make 4 identical boards. This is a very accurate and sufficient way for me because I don't have an accurate table saw to make big cuts like this. So a track saw is very useful for me. It is time to work on the dovetail joints. For the outer corners of the cabinet I'm using a true dovetail joint with a nice mitered corner, which I will mention later as well. First I tape the end of my boards and then I will cut that with my marking gouge from GSM to make sure that I have a straight line, so that tape will act as a reference line to be very visible where I need to place my chisel, until how deep I need to cut. And this is also very handy to lay over the tails on the pin boards. So that is a super handy tip that I really like using in my projects. Here is basically where I just discovered this wood species is very tough. It is super stiff, hard, chips easily, but working with hand tools with this wood species is very hard, at least my experience. I really enjoyed it, but I have to resharpen my chisels along the dovetail process a lot. This took me a lot of resharpening. Luckily I have this Tormek T8 in my shop, which is super handy to make just a small bevel with the honing wheel, so I can keep going and finishing the outer carcass. As I mentioned before, I am making mitered true dovetails, and that is basically 45-degree angle on the sides, so the outer corners, and they will come together later in the project. This is not only very beautiful in my opinion, but also very handy if you want to make rabbets or grooves, which I need to make for my sliding door. So before I'm gonna glue everything together, I make my rabbet groove on the back side with my router table, and I make the grooves for the sliding door as well. You need to do this before you're gonna glue everything together, or else you're gonna be in trouble when everything is glued together. So speaking of this sliding door, this is a very precise process. I always route 2 mm deep in the bottom panel and 9 mm deep in the top panel of the cabinet. By using setup blocks you can set the depth very accurately. This is essential for the proper placement of the sliding door. Now that everything is ready, it is time to glue the whole carcass together. I spent a lot of time on this process. I didn't catch everything on the video because that will be very boring, but be sure glue everything square. Make sure that everything is how you want it, because this is very important, but that is basically with every piece of furniture. It's time to start working on the divider panel, and I'm connecting these with a sliding dovetail. Cutting this dovetail joint, so the groove, I will do that with my track and my OF1010 router with a real square. Now I am sure that the divider panel is nicely square from the front of the cabinet, which is super handy. So I use this track and this real square that I normally use for my track saw and my hand router. So using the same router bit as on my hand router, I'm using this bit also on my router table, and now I'm cutting the dovetails on my router table from on the panel. Now it's time to work on the sliding door. Here I'm making a groove in 2 boards, and this groove is the exact same diameter than the groove in my cabinet. So this is matching. Then I'm cutting these boards in strips and I leave them a little bit thicker so I can run them through my thicknesser to make sure the strips are all nice and smooth and perfectly square. So I made a strip that is the exact same thickness than as the groove on the bars and in the cabinet. This strip I glued in place on the bottom and the top of the bars, and the bars I spaced them out evenly on this piece of plywood, which is super handy. I made a square on one side, so I was able to clamp it all together with nice spaces in between. This is the first time using this technique, and I have to say this is super convenient. Now the bars are wider than needed, and that is I need to cut them with my track saw, which I will do here. And you have to do this very accurately, because if you're gonna cut away too much, then your door will fall out. So this is just a matter of measuring, trying until it fits just perfectly. And as you see, it slides butterly smooth. Now it's time to make 2 drawers. I always follow a fixture process for this. Essentially, I'm making 2 boxes, which is actually a concealed drawer. Then I always attach a drawer front to the drawers, and I have a few reasons for doing this. First, if you want to have a dovetail joint, it is tricky to mount your drawer front straight on your sides. It is not impossible, but it makes it more difficult. Secondly, I always use a slightly thicker drawer front because in my opinion that looks nicer, and I need to make a drawer pull as well. So I attach the drawer front to the box with screws, so you have less chance cupping with your boards. I don't have this experience yet, but I saw it in other furniture projects where boards are just too big, and then if you have 2 temperatures, so your living room is warm and your wall is pretty cold, then you have 2 different temperature rates, and that will be very bad for your furniture. So for the drawers, I made a groove in the bottom before I glue everything together, which is matching with the thickness of my drawer bottom. And then I glued everything together, let that dry overnight, and it was time to glue my drawer front. And this is something that you need to pay attention to. I do this very carefully. It is an important visual component, especially when you're sitting in your living room and often looking to your furniture, so you see all the grains and colors. So pay attention to this, because this is where you make the difference in details. Because the sliding door runs in front of the drawers, I need to make a handle that recesses inwards. For this I use a finger pull bit from Festool, and I started clamping a template onto the center line that I just marked out. And the template has a center line as well. Matching those together makes it very accurately, so my handles are exact in the middle on both drawer fronts. Next, I route out the handle with my plunge router and a copy ring. This needs to be done very carefully and multiple steps. As the chance of mistakes is high here, it is easy to remove too much wood. You can have chip out. Even with all the care I took, I still ended up with burn marks on the wood. This meant that I had quite a bit of sanding to do to get those burning marks out. You see, some things you just can't entirely prevent, at least that is my experience. To mount the drawer front on the box, I took some screws through the drawer box, and then I press gently that drawer front in place how I want to have it, and then you have 2 nice small screw points so you can attach the drawer box on the front, which is something that I unfortunately don't have on footage. So if you want to know exactly how to do this, I have done this in previous videos. I'll put a link in the description below from that particular video. Now there is one thing left, making the frame. I've created an SVG file, so if you are interested in this particular file, I can send them over. Let me know in the comments. What I did, I made a shallow pass with my shaper, and then I cut it out with my jigsaw, and then I flush trimmed that line that I just did with my shaper. So I have 4 nice templates. These templates, I lay them on my material and I draw it over with pencil. Now I take that over to my bandsaw to remove as much as possible of the material, and then it's time to go to my router table and use a small bearing bit to give a shallow pass, and then I will remove that template and I will do it again, and then I will flip the material around and I will use a top bearing bit. In this case I use a spiral bit to remove all the rest of the material. I initially left the bottom stretch a bit longer so I can trim it in the right length with my miter saw. The wood is quite tough, so making an end grain routing cut is not ideal, so that's why I did that with my miter saw. To connect all the parts to each other, I use 2 domino joints, so 2 tenons, and I'm using always the same technique, changing the depth only once, so do both parts and then change the depth and then do both parts, and then you have a nice double tenon fitting joint, which is super strong. I clamped that with these parallel clamps. I have this super handy thing that you can add on your parallel clamp, so you're able to clamp in a corner to provide enough clamping pressure. It's time to cut the back panel in the right dimensions. I installed that with some nails on the back side, and that is sufficient for this job, but you won't see anyway. Now I have this paint scraper, which is super handy for removing glue away. You can even sharpen it on your tools, on your stone or your machine, and a sharp paint scraper is quite handy, I have to say, to remove glue. And also this hand cell that I found on Amazon is fantastic to do the inner corners with your cordless drill. A handy accessories, I will put a link in the description below. No affiliates, no nothing, so it's just a handy thing that I came across that is maybe helpful for you as well. Gluing and screwing the base frame on the cabinet. I did this for the first time with screws. I wanted to be sure that this will stay together for a very long time, and it provides also clamping pressure, and you won't see those screws anyway. So this time I went for screws. Keep my legs always longer, and I will cut them in the right length with my track saw. This is a very accurate way to make your legs all the same length. Now that everything is sanded, ready for the oil, I'm using Osmo 3028 top oil. This is a fantastic product that dries quickly, easy to apply. It retains the color very well for a long time, which is ideal for me. We're done talking now. Enjoy the photos. I want to thank you for watching this video. If you haven't subscribed yet to my channel, please subscribe, like this video. Thanks for your support. And if you got any questions, let me know in the comment, and hopefully I see you in the next video.